Hello, I'm going to show you how I trim the printing spurs off of resin printed 3D parts. There's always a lot of supports on these models. Some models are easier than other ones to get the supports off of. This is a 1/450th scale bridge for T-gauge trains, and I'm going to be using a hobby knife and nippers, mostly the nippers. And you're going to want to reach in with the nippers and cut the supports where the support touches the model. It's the thinnest point of the connection, so it takes absolutely no force or pressure to cut that at all. You go through and cut the ones you can see, and then I'll come down and get the ones in the middle. But you can see on the bottom where at the top they're thin, just one arm. Then you get down to the middle and the bottom, there's a lot more stub ups coming up, and you can't reach in there with the nippers to get them. You can just go through and cut on this bridge at the bottom, and normally I would cut them one at a time here because they're so far away from the model and they're so long. It's safe to cut several at a time, and you just stick them in there and cut through 3 or 4 at a time. And then you can grab them and just pull them off. And you want to be careful if you're pulling on them and you feel any resistance, then one of the supports is running through the model in a way that it's going to break the model. But if you just pull them out one at a time, pull them up, twist them, the little connecting piece will snap right off and you'll be able to pull them out. Sometimes you have to come back through and cut them more than once, and you may have to cut them in the middle and just be slow and gentle with it. See, these are running through that little bitty tight area, so you want to cut them apart so that you're not getting so many at one time. Because again, as long as if you have the patience to do them one single spur at a time, that's the best way to do it. But after you get some experience at taking them off, you'll learn how to feel the pressure and how to take more than one at a time off without damaging the model. And again, a lot of times it's just you grab them once you cut them loose, give them a twist right and left, and they'll pop right out. You can take your thumb on these long ones and you can reach in here and you can get them, or you can push in from the side and they're going to break off. This is possible in this model because there's nothing on the bottom to break. It's just a big flat bridge plate. And I can push in there and I can just break them all free. And I'll go through and break them all on one side. And then I'll come back and I'll do the other side, just like I did the first side. This one I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut them loose at the bottom because these long supports are coming off really well on this model. Not all supports come off as well as this one does. And I have bought models from other people that have really good supports, and I bought models that have really bad supports. My supports are not always the best. It's something that I continually try to improve on. It's a learning experience on how to make proper supports on each different model. So the first few models I sell of a design might not have the best supports on it, but I generally try to improve on them each time I print. I re-support each model each time I print it. The little supports are actually bigger than the bridge strut pieces on this model. The bridge details are 1 millimeter square, and you'll find that on any models. Even this is a T-scale model, but the N-scale models that I make, even though they're larger scale, I have finer detail on them, and I still use 1 millimeter minimum members of the model itself. So you always got to be careful when pulling the supports off, because the supports are actually, I think, 1.2 millimeter diameter. And I can't believe how well these are coming off. Usually you have to take these off one at a time. I'm able to take 2 off at a time, sometimes 3, and they just fall right out. But be patient, take your time, and they'll come out without damaging the model. If you do damage the model, all you have to do is get some super glue. You use thick CA super glue, and you can glue these back together. Save these little supports on these long ones. They make great little things to add to freight loads, and sometimes you can use them to repair broken models if you need to glue an upright in. You can tell in these that they would look like pipes or poles, all types of things that you can put on a flatbed car, junkyard piles. So these are excellent things to have for a modeler. I haven't used the hobby knife yet, but I'm getting ready to, because I've got my fingers down there as far as I can get into it, and sometimes it pulls off, but it's not pulling off of this flat plate for me. So where you can't get in with your finger to push on them, use the hobby knife and try and cut where the support tapers down and touches the model, because that's a really thin place. It doesn't take hardly any pressure at all to cut through that little area. Take off less of the supports on the outside of the model, and then you're going to see the supports inside. And this model, you can't get your finger in there to get them loose. So again, this is the place where you want to use a long-reaching hobby knife and just go in there and cut them loose where they make the connection at. These internal supports have a taper connection on top and bottom, so you can go through and you can just use the sharp edge of the blade to break that little connection on the bottom, and then you can get the tops out. I'm trying to reach in and get some on the top. I'm able to rub the knife up next to them, and then just give the knife a little twist, and that little twist action is enough to break it. I keep trying to stick my finger in there thinking I can reach in, but it's just long enough that I can't reach the middle of it from either direction, and my finger is just big enough that it just doesn't want to go in there. So again, take your time and be patient. I'm not being very patient on this because I'm filming it at the same time I'm doing it. I'm doing a voice over now, and I tried to talk through it as I was doing it, and that didn't turn out so well. So there I got the last piece on there. Now you see a lot of little tiny barbs on the model, and all you have to do is take your hobby knife and just scratch at those, and they're going to come right off. It's one of those things on the bottom of this, all those connection points made a bunch of little dimples, and if it matters on something like this, it doesn't matter too much on this one, but I'm just showing how to do it. Just take you a piece of sandpaper, rub it back and forth, Make sure the sandpaper is on a flat surface, so you're making it flat as you remove them. And then you can just keep on going until you get it as smooth as you want. As I said, in this one, it doesn't matter too much because the bridge bottom will not be seen. If you hold it like that and sand it where it's not on a flat surface, come back and do some long sanding swipes so that you have consistent level edge on it. And then this is the tiny T-gauge train, and this is a double track bridge, so I can stick 2 pieces of track in here and you have 2 trains running through it at the same time. It's amazing how small this train is. They actually have a motor inside the engine, picks up electric continuity from the rails, and they run really well for as small as they are. You wouldn't think that these would run, but they do. I don't know how they make them so small. I do enjoy making the small models for it though. And then again, you can go over this 3 or 4 times, breaking off these um, little nibs, little spurs. They're just from that little bitty edge. And every time you come back to the model, you're going to find more because they're so small. It's hard to see them all, unless you're using a, a microscope. I mean, not a microscope, but a magnifying glass, and you're really taking your time to catch them all. I usually think I got them all, and then I go to paint the model, and that's where I find that I missed some. But a lot of times it doesn't matter to have it perfect either. So it's just a trick of on this bridge, because it has a top, bottom, and 2 sides, and they're not really big holes to get into everything. It's just how do I get into it to get them out when I find them. So you just have to look at it and figure out where, the best way to reach it. Okay, that's all there is to it. I hope this answers some questions on how to take your time and get these models out from the packing. And I'll see you next time.